What do you think of when you hear the name Malcolm X? Do you think of a raving lunatic or the man who changed the civil rights movement? He was an innovator, a specialist, and the man who changed everything.
As a child, Malcolm X's turmoil started young. Before he was ever born, there was already prejudice against him. One night, while his father was preaching in Milwaukee, some Ku Klux Klansmen came to Little's front door in Omaha, Nebraska, and demanded to see Earl Little, Malcolm's father. When his mother told them that he was away, they broke all the home's windows and rode away. Thus began Malcolm's terrible childhood before he ever started life. Life then got progressively worse. The family resettled in Milwaukee, but some of the slaves gossiped to the Black Legion about Earl's ideas of freedom, and the Legion threatened the Littles to leave town or lose their lives.
When Malcolm Little was only 4, his family was forced to move because their lives were being threatened by the Black Legion. One night, Malcolm awoke to ashes, flames, and was promptly grabbed up as his family left their home while it burned to the ground. Malcolm was the 7th child to Mr. Little and 4th to Mrs. Little. At a young age, Malcolm experienced violence as an example on how to solve problems.
Whenever Miss Little would upset Mr. Little, he would grab her and promptly beat her. Malcolm had the lightest skin of all his brothers and sisters, and so he was rarely beaten because he appeared to be nearly white, all too much like his mother. His dad never could stand being told what to do, especially by a white, but Malcolm always suspected that his father favored him because he was white. His mother hated X for being white. She hated white too, and Malcolm got beatings from his mother alone. Violence is terribly wrong when there are other solutions, but Malcolm was taught at a young age that it was okay. When Malcolm came home one day, his father had taken one of the rabbits they were going to sell for money and had ripped its head off and threw it at his mother, who with tears streaming prepared it to eat. Earl Little stormed out the door and was not seen for a while. When the family heard news of him, it was news of his death. His body was found lying on the train tracks. The rest of the family was forced to fend for themselves. Malcolm became a thief and stole food so that he could eat. No one ever got food beyond a small, tiny scrap. It was too much to handle. Malcolm's mom went insane and the family was divided.
Malcolm decided to join Elijah Muhammad in the Nation of Islam because he valued his political views and he wanted to give the blacks their land and rights and freedom. He joined Elijah in 1952 when he was 27. Malcolm X said, "You don't integrate with a sinking ship." Malcolm X was once named Malcolm Little. He disregarded his last name because he viewed it as a remnant of his old life, his slave life. Malcolm X gave the speech "The Chickens Come Home to Roost" on December 4th, 1963. Malcolm believed that John Kennedy's death was caused by him not addressing the violence in America. This was his response and one of the reasons for his assassination. John's chickens had come back to roost.
Malcolm believed that slavery was an evil sin that caused the downfall of many civilizations, and was taught that by the Honorable Elijah Muhammad. America is being destroyed by slavery, is what he said. He also said, "What does God want for these 22 million ex-slaves?" He believes in the God of justice. He believes in Islam. The Honorable Elijah Muhammad has restored our cultural roots, our racial identity, our racial pride, and our racial confidence, is what he always believed and what he always taught.
Malcolm said, "He has given us the incentive and energy to stand on our own feet and walk for ourselves. We are living in a time of prophecy fulfillment which we will use to proclaim God and freedom. But before God can set up this new world, the Muslim world, our word of Islam, which we will establish on the principles to truth, peace, and brotherhood, God himself must first destroy this evil Western world, the white world, a wicked world ruled by a race of devils that preaches falsehood, practices slavery, and thrives on indecency and immortality."
Malcolm believed that doomsday, the final hour, when the ancient prophets predicted that God himself would appear in person, in the flesh, and with divine power he would bring about the judgment and destruction of this present and most evil world.
Malcolm X believed that the hour of judgment and doom is upon white America for the evil seeds of slavery and hypocrisy she has sown. and God himself has declared that no one shall escape the doom of this Western world except those who accept Allah as his God, Islam as his only religion, and the Honorable Elijah Muhammad as his messenger to the 22 million ex-slaves here in America, 22 million Negroes who are referred to in the symbolism of the scriptures as the lost sheep, the lost tribes, or the lost people of God.
Malcolm believed that white America is doomed. God has declared that the Honorable Elijah Muhammad is your only means of escape. When you reject the Honorable Elijah Muhammad, when you refuse to hear his message or hear his warning, you are closing your only door of escape. He always believed that when you cut yourself off from him, you cut yourself off from your only way out of the divine disaster that is fast approaching white America. It is what he believed, it is what he taught, and what he spoke.
Malcolm X's speeches inflamed African Americans, which caused riots. Martin Luther King Jr. brought peace through his speeches because he says that all of the black people are being treated the same and that they all need to work together. Malcolm X saw what Martin Luther King was trying to do and thought that if it kept going on like this, then black people would lose all of their freedom. Because Martin Luther King Jr. was being peaceful about it and nothing was happening, Malcolm X provoked violence. Malcolm X and Elijah Muhammad actually disagreed on a few things. Elijah had had many kids with different women, and Malcolm X thought that this was wrong. Malcolm also thought that Elijah was wrong for not wanting to help the brother of an African American who had gotten murdered just because the devils or white people killed him. Elijah thought that white people should have to take care of him because they're the ones who killed his brother.
Malcolm X decided to join the Nation of Islam when he saw how broken the world really was. Elijah Muhammad said, "The black man's duties for the self-preservation of his black self and of black kind. I have given you an example through my own work, and I am still giving you an example of how you can do something for self." Elijah taught that the white man has had the black man under bonds for too long, and we should just create a separatist union. He agreed with the idea of separatism, and wanted to create a whole new nation where whites could live in one part and blacks in another.
Elijah taught that through the Muslim religion, white America was doomed, and the blacks could take their rightful places in the afterworld. Malcolm believed in the Nation of Islam, his Islam. His speeches were strong and powerful and controversial, and he made many enemies.
Malcolm X offended the whites by stating the superiority of his race over their own, and was very forceful with the whites. But in doing this, he gave hope to the African Americans. On February 21, 1965, Malcolm was speaking to a large audience of people when 5 men stood from the audience and shot Malcolm. An ambulance was called, but it did not get there for half an hour, and Malcolm X was no more.
After Malcolm X's assassination, a lot of the African Americans were mad. Martin Luther King Jr. thought of Malcolm's assassination as something to show us that we still have not found a peaceful way of working things out, and that we still are disagreeing. Some people would still talk about how Malcolm X did great things and not remember him by his death. They tried to bring him back in a way. A lot of African Americans kept on honoring Malcolm X.